Hey guys, it's Danny. Guess what time it is? It is early morning, but that's not important. It is time to make some updates. I have quite some interesting things to show you, or at least I think they're interesting. So we're gonna have a chill video. Grab a beverage, grab a snack, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever it may be, because we're gonna take it slow and we're gonna look at some orchids and some projects that I at least find quite interesting. So that said, before we start, don't forget to give this video a like if you end up enjoying it. Why not subscribe? It is free and I post multiple times a week. And if you're feeling extra about it, you can further support the channel by becoming a member, using the affiliate links in the description, getting some merch, or using the super thanks option down below under my videos. Right, with that said, let us start. We're just gonna start with this one since I have it here. We're gonna do something very courageous today. We're gonna film with the windows open because I really like the sounds of birds in the morning and my noisy neighbors are not awake. But if I hear activity, we're gonna close it. Right, so this is the, oh brother, this orchid needs to have a smaller name. Phalaenopsis Yaphon lobistis cross Tianjin Cupid Yaphon number 3. I'm gonna see if it actually has a shorter name because this is a bit ridiculous. I'm gonna call her Steve from now on just to save up on time. So this is the only orchid that's remaining in the Lechuza self-watering pots. If you missed the video in which I presented these pots in the orchid pond, check it down below, I'll link it there. Spoilers, I didn't really like it. I already moved the orchid from pond into a normal setup and I left this one be because it was in my normal sphagnum moss and bark system. And well, it's growing, it's nice. It also had blooms. I think sherry covered very nicely. It is also slightly fragrant. I really like this orchid, but I don't like how this medium looks like. I have so much algae deposits. I do have a few strands of live moss I see as well. I'll give you a close-up because somebody actually asked if what I'm seeing are algae or cyanobacteria or actual live moss. No, I can tell the difference, trust me. And judging by the way it stinks, oh, it's cyano. So I do have a few strands of live moss. I was considering starting the sphagnum moss colony yet again in a high humidity environment, which I can. So maybe I can save the moss here, but most of it, everything you see green is actually algae. And yeah, if I stick my nose on the pot a little bit, it's starting to smell suspicious. So what I'm going to do when the flowers are done, they're pretty much done. In June, I like to kind of stop the Phalaenopsis madness, cut away all of their flower spikes and let them focus on vegetative growth. So soon enough, I will cut the flower spike and I will repot this orchid into more of a suitable setup for me here. But she is okay. It's not a bad setup. It's not necessarily a bad pot. It's just not very suitable here because everything is transparent. It has a very big transparent lip and it will create algae since it is a high moisture setup. Self-watering obviously is more of a high moisture setup, which for me works great. As you will see, I'm going to show you some high moisture setups that are just wonderful. It doesn't mean it's the best setup for everybody, it's just something good for me. But the pot is a no-no for me. I'm still deliberating what to do with the pots. I was considering putting my, what's the name? I don't use the name often. My Anthurium warocreanum. I was considering putting him here in a more soily mixture. I'm still considering, because that guy is thirsty. So I might do that in the end. But for orchids, nah, this is not for me. Tell me in the comments, do you like these pots? Are you using them? Let me know. I'm personally not a fan of them. Right, so now let me show you a high moisture setup that actually works great for me. Another self-watering pot, but this time it is opaque. And I have here a Cattleya type orchid, which is very special. So this is my Hoku gem sunspots. And I don't know if you can tell, but this orchid, which is a Cattleya type, has a secondary spike at the same time in bloom as the main spike. Now this is rare, like truly, it doesn't happen. In all of my 10 years experience with Cattleya specifically, it never happened to me. And you will not find a picture on the internet with something like this happening. Now, this is a very, let's say, common thing to happen to epidendrums. Now, epidendrums can actually be crossed with Cattleyas. They are compatible in that way. And there are many hybrids, intergeneric hybrids between these two genera. However, this one is not an epidendrum hybrid, it is a Brassocattleya hybrid. Now, indeed, if you remember, I did show you a video in which I was saying that my Brassocattleya is reblooming from the same flower spike at some point after the initial bloom. Yes, that can happen. Not necessarily something that happens with all Brassocattleas, but at least with the Cucullata, it happens. Might happen with the notorious Nodosa as well, maybe, which is the parent of this one, but it doesn't happen at the same time is what I'm trying to say. To some extent, the Brassocattleya is a sort of a sequential bloomer. So I'm guessing that is the gene that contributed to the secondary spike of this orchid. But again, it is not a second flush of blooms, it is not a sequential bloom or flush of blooms, it is at the same time. It is a Cattleya with a secondary spike. Now, I have never ever seen this, which doesn't mean it's impossible, it just means it doesn't happen way that often, and I am really liking the display. Also, the new growth, this one that bloomed, is the biggest so far on this orchid, and that actually has to do a little bit with the setup. Please don't understand from my videos that this setup is the greatest and you should use this and this particular product is the greatest and so on and so forth. No, it's nothing like that. It just happens to work well with everything. So, high moisture setups for me, who lives in an oven, obviously will work great because they maintain my orchids more hydrated and they have more synergy with my lifestyle, which is kind of chaotic sometimes because I don't need to be on point with watering necessarily for the orchid to remain hydrated. The more hydration, the more water is present for the orchid, the better it will absorb those nutrients. You can imagine when the medium dries, there is no more nutrient absorption. And also the orchid starts to lose water through transpiration, and that is a stress. Now, contrary to many opinions out there, no, orchids don't bloom necessarily when they're stressed. And no, they don't bloom better when you ignore them or when you stress them out or things of the sorts. No, they bloom better when they have resources to bloom better. It's all about that logic we talked about last time. And this orchid simply had resources because I had a reservoir here with water. And that's why it excelled. I'm not sure if that's why it created a secondary spike, but obviously it can handle it. Energy-wise, it has resources. So the setup is not the greatest, it just works out well for me, and I do intend to keep it. It has been in here for, I think, the past 3 years. It is time to remove. Oh, this bark does not look good at all. Okay, so my bark is not the best of quality, certainly lower quality than my moss. It's good, it does the job. I find it locally quite affordable. Rather than importing all sorts of orchiatas and kiwi bark, you know, it's okay, it's friendly for the wallet. But it's not the best of quality necessarily because it's not intended for orchid use, it is a reptile use. And certainly you don't use it 3 years with reptiles, right? So my problem is the bark, ooh, it's so degraded. I'm gonna give you close-ups. My bark degrades so fast that the moss that I have to throw away together with the bark would have still gone well for another year. So I will repot it soon. Maybe I'll take you along and I'll put it in a full sphagnum moss setup, which again will be kind of the same as the self-watering setup. So it shouldn't have any issues transitioning to this brand new medium because the effects will be the same. We're gonna see how we're gonna go about it, but there we go. That's the setup. This is the result. It just works out well for me. And I really love this orchid. Now that I know it has this potential, she's one of my favorites. She's gonna have a... Oh, also I didn't mention, this whole inflorescence is not obtained with natural light. She did not see natural light almost at all. She was under the Barinas. They did a great job, didn't they? I'm so happy I can rebloom Cattleya types under Barinas. So yeah, she will... Oh no. I bent a root. It's okay. It's okay. I didn't break it. Oh no, another one. All right, so obviously needs a repot because the pot cannot contain the roots. Anyway, so yeah, there we go. That's what I wanted to show you. Quite a unique inflorescence, quite a unique orchid, I would say. It is really gorgeous. Next up, we're looking at a very tiny little orchid. This is my Sedirea japonica Minmaru Shima. It is a tiny variegated Sedirea, and oh boy, it is not a cheap orchid. So here's a little update on it. First of all, I wanted to clarify something that I said in my initial video about this orchid. I said this, or wait, was it in a community post? Maybe a community post. I said that this variegation is beautiful but scary. What I meant is that excessive amounts of variegation on plants are not good. All of these patches that are yellowish or whitish on the plants are devoid of chlorophyll, or they have very little. So in those parts of the leaves, photosynthesis is either not optimal, either not existent. So the more variegation you have, the less food the orchid prepares for itself. And that tends to get a little scary if you have great amounts of variegation, such as this little orchid has. The good thing is that down below, can we see we do have almost full green leaves, so that's good. They definitely do photosynthesize, but sometimes the worry or the problem with these variegated plants, no matter if they're orchids or other types of plants, is that it's easy for these highly variegated plants to go overboard with the variegation. And if they lose the bottom leaves or the older leaves, what's gonna photosynthesize? They are just gonna wither away. And this can happen with African violets as well. I had it happen with aeroids. With orchids, not so much. They tend to be a little bit more stable with their variegation, but this one is highly variegated. It is beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful specimens of the Minmaru Shima that I've ever seen, but it's scary. So this one is potted in full sphagnum moss, but I wanted to put it in a transparent pot just so I see how the roots are doing. I need to go back because I already see some algae starting to form. I might have 1 or 2 dead roots. I can remove them. Since this is a tiny pot, one root makes much more of a bigger impact than in a bigger pot. If it was a bigger pot, I wouldn't bother. 1 root dead, it's okay. It doesn't really affect the pot that much. But in a tiny pot, I'm very tempted to go back and repot this orchid into a bigger pot since it is just starting to put out a ton of new roots. And I want these new roots to grow directly in their forever home. So repotting now will not disturb anything, is what I'm saying. So I think I want to do that. But yeah, this is the update. We have a new leaf forming as well. This orchid should bloom probably in the autumn or winter. So I'm not expecting blooms or anything. It is vegetative growth season. And I do feel like the variegation is coming back. It's not going away slowly and surely. Or actually what I mean is the green in the leaves. So I feel like this leaf has more green than this one, which is good. I want a balanced amount of variegation. But yeah, there you go. That's the little update on the Sedirea. Next up, let's make an update on my Psychosis orchid. Now this one has been in here for 3 years. Oh, now that I think about it, the Cattleya and the self-watering, maybe she has been there for 2 years. Because I do remember I repotted this before that one. I don't have dates on the tags with these ones, so as good as my memory is, whenever I repot stuff, sometimes it fails. So this guy definitely needs a repot. I will take you along because I don't have many Psychosis repots on my channel. But what I wanted to show you is that indeed we have 2 flower spikes. It grew ever since I purchased it, but recently I discovered a new one starting to grow. This orchid is doing pretty fantastic. It's growing very fast. I have another growth here starting. Obviously, the more growths you have on this orchid, the more flower spikes. Now the problem is, they're not necessarily the most comfortable flower spikes to live with because they're very tall, but hey, it's okay, the flowers are beautiful. One thing I noticed though, is that this orchid doesn't bloom like it should recently, and I think I know why. So, you know that on my shelves, I have Barinas pretty much on every floor, quote unquote. Well, one of the shelves, the one that has the mini Phalaenopsis, doesn't have this middle shelf. Let's say I removed it. I made a place for taller orchids there. But the quantity of light that reaches the bottom is obviously halved, since I only have the grow lights up top. And well, I feel like this orchid requires more light than that. This one and some other Cattleyas that I tried there, I'm thinking they need a little bit more light. Now, if the light would be lower, I'm pretty sure it would be absolutely fine, but the light is pretty high. So I decided recently to switch the location of this guy to the south side of my plant room. He does not fit in the Visto shelf quite at all because these flower spikes are about 50 centimeters high, which is more than the height of my shelf. But it's funny how I think the light affected it. It makes sense though. The more energy you have, the more you will bloom, the more you will put out structures. Roots, leaves, blooms, right? Well, if you don't have enough light to photosynthesize and produce enough food to sustain all of these structures, you're just not gonna perform as well, right? So I'm thinking the increase of light will help. but I'm not entirely sure. We'll keep you up to date. For the past at least 6 months, maybe more, I've kept this orchid under grow lights, and I'm not very happy with the blooming. I think it did much better in a stronger light situation. It did grow quite a bit. I mean, the leaves are pretty long, and you know what? That might be the orchid's way of trying to absorb more light. So maybe it put all of its resources more into the leaves than into the flowers. That could be a possibility, right? I'm thinking it makes sense. So I'm gonna keep it in natural light now, stronger natural light, and we'll see how it does. Hopefully we're gonna have more blooms. I'll keep you up to date with that, but yeah, that's a funny little thing that I discovered. Righty, next up, let's look a little bit at the golden leopard. I showed you this one in a previous video. I was saying my dream came true, and it did, but I want to give you an update on it, first of all, and also do some corrections on what I said in that video. So I did some research, and apparently this one is not a polychilus. It's actually a miniature Phalaenopsis. If you look at the parentage, you're gonna see the equestris has quite a big impact, or is one of the main parents of this orchid. That's why it's so tiny. So I do expect it not to grow bigger than a miniature Phalaenopsis. We'll see about that, obviously, but I don't think it will. Also, the flowers, yeah, that's why they look like a typical flower shop miniature Phalaenopsis. They have, I think, the Aphrodite in their parentage, which looks like this. And also, they have the shape and the size of a miniature Phalaenopsis. For all intents and purposes, this is a miniature Phalaenopsis, the typical one you might be able to find in flower shops, but I don't think you will be able to find it in flower shops. Purchased it from Orchids Deluxe, by the way. I do believe it will perform and behave just like the others. So, really easy to grow. I think it takes proper Phalaenopsis care. I think it will bloom in the autumn, being triggered by the drop in temperature, not by the heat. And, you know, whatever other grow tips you can apply to normal Phalaenopsis, this one should take as well. Now, the flowers. Indeed, they are not fragrant. There's really nothing much in its parentage to offer any fragrance. I really don't detect anything after all this time. And the worst thing of all, that yellow fades, you guys. It doesn't go completely white, but definitely it considerably fades in time. And you can see the older flowers are not so striking anymore, which is a shame, but at the same time, it is still unique. I do still really, really like it. And now that I know it's super easy to grow, you know, I like it even more. But, you know, pros and cons. This is not a very typical coloration for a Phalaenopsis, so I'll take it. I still love it. But just so you know, if you ever see this one for sale for like $200 or something, yeah, just know these things about it and then make a decision if you want to buy it or not, because you might be a little disappointed. It's just a miniature Phalaenopsis with a very beautiful coloration and pattern. You know how phals have the tendency to fade as they age, the flowers? Yeah, this one has it too, just so you know. So, thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you want to follow me on social media, search for me. I'm at MissOrchidGirl pretty much everywhere. Check out my shorts channel if you're in the mood for short videos, but most importantly, subscribe to this channel because this is where I post the good stuff. And with that said, I'll see you next time. Bye!